Yeah, it's also a bit of a trap though, isn't it? Right? Like, oh, I can do it myself. Why don't I just do it myself? And I spend time doing that stuff instead of doing what I what I would rather be spending my time doing, honestly, which is, writing new books. So yeah, it's good. I think over the years I've learned, what I can outsource and what I can't. And if you look at, especially the indie author market, the authors who are most successful are the ones who have a good handle on marketing. They have a good grasp on what's needed in that realm as well, right? Like they're not just great writers, because great writers disappear into the ether of the surplus of books all the time.
This is the future.
Hello and welcome to the Alternate Futures podcast, where we chat with indie sci-fi creators about their work, the world, and anything in between, or beyond. Today I'm here with M.G. Herron. Matt is the author of Relics of the Ancients, The Gun Files, and other novels of character-driven science fiction adventure. His stories explore new worlds, futuristic technology, ancient mysteries, various apocalypses, and the vagaries of human experience. When he's not writing fiction, he's working as an experience and product design strategist. He enjoys traveling with his wife, hiking remote forest paths, and drinking ice-cold beer on shady porches in Austin, Texas. Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining me today from the Lone Star State.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So from your bio, the first thing that stands out is, I don't know if you have a ranch, but I see you sitting on a rocking chair on the porch with a shotgun on your lap and beer in your hand.
Yeah, that's the stereotypical image of Texas, isn't it? No, we live in Austin, in the city. So yeah, just city living. You drive about 15 minutes south and you're in the hill country. So that's a little different out there. But yeah, we're in the Austin area.
So is there a lot of good hiking around that area then?
Yeah, pretty good. We don't have a lot of elevation, so there's no like mountains. You have to drive several hours and like west to get to like Big Bend or something to get good hiking. We go up to Colorado like once a year to get some real good mountain hiking in. But there are a bunch of trails here. There's a green area in Austin called the Green Belt. I used to spend a lot of time rock climbing there and hiking there. They have some short limestone walls that are pretty fun, usually single pitch stuff. A couple high points that you can rappel from, but we don't have like mountains, in this area.
Right. So you've done some rock climbing then. It sounds like fairly significant if you're doing sort of outdoor rock climbing.
Yeah, I spent a good chunk of my early 20s learning to sport climb and boulder. And so I lived in Germany at the time. I did a bunch of bouldering and outdoor climbing on the sandstone there. There's a forest in Western Germany I think it's called the Pfälzerwald. We lived in the province of Rhineland-Pfalz. Anyway, there's a forest there, and they have like these sandstone towers kind of like jutting up out of the forest. It's really beautiful, and that's multi-pitch sport climbing. And I never did any of the big walls, but I learned to climb there. And when I came back to Austin, one of the things that was appealing was that they have rock climbing in the city. I don't have to drive an hour. I could just drive 20 minutes, hop in the Greenbelt, and start climbing on the limestone there. So it's been a few years since I've done it seriously, but I was definitely I got the bug for a while. I caught it.
It's something I would have loved to have done when I was younger, but I wasn't in the right part of the world for it, so didn't really have the opportunity. My daughter is doing rock climbing, largely indoor at the moment, but
yeah, totally. Gym climbing's so fun. It's a bit different, but there's a couple bouldering gyms in Austin that are great. So yeah, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, as parents, you get a bit nervous about putting your kid outdoor bouldering or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to my parents. They were always like, be careful, but they never stopped me from going, even on the outdoor routes. And it can be dangerous. Like rock climbing is really, really dangerous. I know people have lost their lives, out on the mountains. Mountaineering is not exactly a safe sport, but I think that's part of the thrill, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think anyone who thinks it probably is safe is probably not paying attention to it. But you make it as safe as you can, don't you? I mean, you train really well to do and to train to be safe as well.
Mm-hmm. And the gear's gotten so much better over the years. I mean, like the cams and different like carabiners that you can use to like auto secure yourself. Like they have magnetic locking carabiners now that like make sure that you can't forget to tie things. So it's definitely gotten better. Back in the 60s and 70s when people were pioneering sport climbing routes, it was dangerous. You can see old videos of those guys climbing in their boots, and sneakers or barefoot. They're still barefoot climbers, but back then it was gnarly.
Jeez. So it's gotten more Star Trekky, basically.
Mm.
I can't remember which movie it was that they were rock climbing, but
Yeah. Well, you still got to climb. No teleporters to the top, right? No transporter.
Yeah. That wouldn't be fun anyway, though, would it?
Right. Exactly.
So Austin's not too far from Waco when I was looking that up.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours.
Famous place for not very nice reasons, perhaps. Were you around at any of that period in history?
No. I moved here about 2012, so I've been here about a decade.
Okay, so fairly recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you from the Austin area then originally, or you just sort
No,
of
I grew up in Delaware on the East Coast
wow.
of the U.S. And we moved around a bit. My dad was military, he's retired Air Force pilot, and we moved around a little bit. But I spent a lot of time in Delaware, and then a couple of years in Germany after I graduated college, and then after that, I moved to Austin for work and fun.
Right. Do you guys get the humidity there as well from the south, or is it not too bad?
Oh yeah, it depends who you ask. Like, it's not New Orleans, but it's humid.
Right. Okay. And you're an experienced and product design strategist. At least that's what it says in your bio. What exactly does that mean? Maybe you can walk us through that a bit.
Well, I've been building websites since I was probably in middle school. It's like 12 or 13. Was taught myself to code, built a couple software projects, started building websites for people, getting clients. And so now, 15 years later, I do what's called design strategy. So, user experience design strategy. If we are like embarking on a project to rebuild a big company's website, and we work with, Fortune 100 brands to do web and app work. I'm the person who says we should build this and why we do it, and in what order we do things, and how do we achieve the business outcomes, the goals that we want to achieve. So I work at a large company that's a research and design company, and clients hire us to do that kind of work. So they have big company problems, right? Enterprise level problems, and they need strategy to make sure that they're going to realize their investment, that the project's going to work, that it's done properly. They don't have to do it again a couple of years later, right? These are not cheap projects. So strategy is a bigger role. Whereas, for an author business, you're just going to pop a website up. You're not going to go hire a team to do that, right? It's cost prohibitive. But at that scale, at that kind of company, big brands, multinational brands, US brands, they need something a little bit different, right? They have different technical stacks. They have different needs.
Right. So I imagine that, as you said, you work at a lot bigger scale than your author business, but it surely must have the same principles then have helped you in your author business, presumably.
Yeah, certainly, like design, right? Like if you're building a book, you're still packaging a product, right? You need to have a good eye for design and for what a good product looks like. Certainly, I've spent a lot of time in content strategy and content marketing too. That helps run an author business. I still write copy for ads. For example, every book I write has to have a book description that hooks readers and gets them to press buy. So yeah, I mean, certainly some of the skills that I use on a day-to-day basis in my design strategy job can be applied to this business. But yeah, it's kind of a different skill. It's the what I do on a day-to-day basis is the process of building things. So like I'm really good at like building a product, building a website is one of the things that is just, second nature for me. Whereas some authors who aren't so technical struggle with that sort of thing. But I've had to learn a lot of other things, doing design strategy is not the same thing as running a business. And doing design strategy, even though I'm telling stories for a living, like it's my job to tell clients, like, this is the story that we are telling for your brand. And this is how we're going to tell that story out in the world, right? How we're going to bring it to life in this digital experience. But telling stories in that context and telling stories in a fictional, space opera, sci-fi, mystery, portal fiction context, which is what I do in my fiction, it's such a different beast, right? Like the craft of storytelling, of especially long length narrative form, is so different from business storytelling or like sitting down at a bar and telling your friends a story about something that happened last week, right? They're in the same domain, but they're just very different skills.
Yeah, I think most authors will agree that, well, like you said, the short form is completely different from the long form story as well. But I think that also a lot of authors would love to have your sort of content strategy, marketing background experience, well, or any kind of marketing background experience these days.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
must be at least helpful that way. At least you can build your website as well. A great many authors I speak to,
Yes.
you have to hire someone, etc.
Yeah, it's also a bit of a trap though, isn't it? Right? Like, oh, I can do it myself. Why don't I just do it myself? And I spend time doing that stuff instead of doing what I would rather be spending my time doing, honestly, which is, writing new books. So yeah, it's good. I think over the years I've learned, what I can outsource and what I can't. And if you look at, especially the indie author market, the authors who are most successful are the ones who have a good handle on marketing. They have a good grasp on what's needed in that realm as well, right? Like they're not just great writers, because great writers disappear into the ether of the surplus of books all the time. There are great writers everywhere, but if they don't know how to reach readers, they don't know how to market their books, then it's hard for people to find them.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think that's the big challenge.
Yeah, you can write the best book the world has ever seen, and if no one knows it exists, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Exactly.
So did you what was your start in writing then? Like your path towards, did you start writing like prior to your job in content strategy, or did that sort of
Yeah, I did. So the other day I was cleaning out one of our closets, and I found like an old box of stuff that, from my childhood, like old school medals and, soccer medals and old, photos and stuff like that, like an old yearbook from high school. And I also found an old story that I wrote with a friend in like third grade. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've always wanted to write. I think I started taking it seriously in college. And like I said, I taught myself to program and, do computer stuff before then. So I actually went to school for computer science. And I quickly realized that the advanced math, like calculus 2, wasn't for me. And I switched to English Lit because I love books and I wanted to be a writer. I didn't know what shape that would take at the time, but I was trying to write short stories, not really having much success, struggling to finish things, which is a problem super common with young writers. Like they start things and they can't actually finish
or
anything.
older
This is
writers
why,
as well? Like
yeah,
myself.
or why new authors spend, it's not uncommon for an author to come on and say, oh yeah, I spent 10 years writing my first book and 6 months on my second, right? Because that first one just takes a long time. So I started writing short stories and that sort of thing. And then in 2015, I took a trip to Chichen Itza in Mexico, which is a Mayan pyramid in Mexico. And that trip just like lit my imagination on fire. And I came home and wrote the Eureka Project, which was my first novel. And I had finished a couple short stories by then. I was kind of getting the craft of storytelling down. I kind of knew like what milestones I had to hit. I had like taken a couple, well, I don't think I took courses at that point, but I'd read a couple books on like story structure and was trying to wrap my head around this whole thing, right? Because it's a skill, it's a craft, and it's separate from, what you're doing, telling stories just as a normal human being living their life. So but in 2015, I guess that was the first time I finished a book. And it took me like, another, I think it came out in September 2015. So I really started it like end of 2013, 2014. I think it took me 14 months to write the first one. And then I edited it ad nauseum, started another thing, went back and did that, released this one, like was kind of bopping around a little bit. But September 2015 was the first book I published myself.
Right. I'm just curious if there's something in the first book, because you said like you went back and forth. Did you feel you had a good grasp on, let's say, character development, things like that, and plot structure at that point, or is there stuff that you sort of go back and fix it up at that?
In a word, like no. I was pretty clueless, but that's kind of how you learn these things, is you kind of feel your way through the dark, and then you figure out, what the room looks like and where to go and what things you have to do. So I worked with an editor who was great to improve some of the aspects of that book. I mean, I still think that it's a first book and it has some first book flaws, but I learned a lot writing that book about storytelling, story structure, character development. And that book is it's a portal fiction story about basically a genius engineer and an archaeologist who are married, and she gets sucked through the portal and thrown into this alternate Mayan world across the galaxy, where she's kind of, taken in by this Mayan tribe, and there's all sorts of superstitions and strange gods and weird stuff going on, and she's trying to figure out that mystery, and he's trying to find her. And so the seed of that idea, I had this idea of, a couple that got separated but could track each other by a gemstone. And then I added that to the Chichen Itza, like Mayan pyramid idea. And I was like, oh, that's it. It's those two things coming together that it's going to make this work. And it works because the couple has a goal, right? Like they're trying to be reunited. So as long as that was clear, like that's the arc of the book, and that gave me enough of a skeleton to actually, launch into the story. And I figured out the rest along the way. Character development, like plotting and pacing and all that sort of stuff, but kind of hops back and forth between the two characters. So it tends to be pretty fast paced, which is a fun thing to read.
Yeah, one of the issues I had when I started writing was I felt like a lot of my characters seemed all the same. And so that's why I was curious. I mean, this was like almost 20 years ago now, but
yeah.
And so I shelved a lot of that stuff, and I'm going back to it now to try and sort of redevelop it with characters that actually feel unique as well. But you're describing your Translocator trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
What was, I mean, you said it was inspired by your trip to Mexico. Was there any inspiration around the sort of what's, I guess, now being called ancient alien astronaut theories?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I've always been fascinated by the ancient alien concept. That's one of the themes that recurs in my book, is this idea of, in all my books, is this idea of ancient aliens. So the space opera Relics of the Ancients, in that story, the starfighter pilots find ancient alien relics. So there are ancient aliens in both of those series. It's the one thing that ties them together. Otherwise, they're in totally separate universes.
Right, because you have secret organizations built into that one as well. And did you think to expand it beyond the one sort of ancient culture? So I've started recently following a lot of the ancient, I will call it prehistory history. I'm not sure if you're paying much attention to that, but sort of pre-biblical history and before that. And so I'm just curious if you factored anything like that into your stories.
Well, I never did ancient humanity, but in the space opera books, there's a race of ancient aliens. So it's possible there could be other ones. I'm not sure yet. The first trilogy of novels and the 3 prequel novellas all focus on this one ancient alien species called the Telos and the Krill, which are like the bad guys. And then there's the humans who moved into the galaxy later after they migrated from Earth. And so there's the 3 species, and it's the interplay between those 3 species, and, their relationships to each other is what those books are about. And of course, the ancient technology they find and the powers it has to basically keep humanity safe.
So, I mean, you do have quite a backlist as well. We'll get into a few others in a moment. I was just wondering, sort of, what is your writing schedule? Because obviously you have a full-time job then as well.
Yeah, for years, my schedule was the entire weekend and mornings for like an hour or two. I get up early and write, and then just whatever I can fit in on the weekend. My wife and I started taking in foster kids last year, so I have a little bit less time than I used to, but especially on the weekends, right? We have 3 kids now. So it's been a change for me in my schedule, but for years it was like mornings before I go to work and, the weekends, holidays. Like, my favorite thing to do is to spend a holiday writing. So it wasn't hard for me to find the time. It was juggling the other responsibilities. And I found that if I did it in the mornings and I did it first thing, and there was less friction, there was less, as Stephen Pressfield calls it, resistance with a capital R, right? And I could just sit down and get into the story for an hour, write 1,000 words or something. And that just adds up over time. So you get up fairly early then to get this into your schedule? I find that I would like to write in the morning, but it doesn't usually work out that way. Yeah. I mean, if I could get, 7:30 to 8:30 and then go to work, like, that's great. And if I focus, I can write 1,000 words in an hour, but you got to be ready, right? You can't just I can't. I know there are certainly authors who can and who do every day, right? Wing it for 5,000 words. I'm not that writer. I'm the writer that I'm a systems thinker. Like, this is what makes me a good strategist, is that I think in systems and I think in structure, and I'm good at planning. So I kind of have a plan mapped out and I know what I'm going to write next. And I just focus on that for a little while. And if I cut out all the distractions, I can get 1,000 words in an hour.
Right. So would you consider yourself a pantser or a plotter or something in between? I guess what they call it.
I think I'm something in between now.
plant, what do they call it? A plantster or something, I think.
I don't know. I find these kind of like, it's more of a spectrum, right? Like for me,
Right,
it's not binary. It's not like you're one or the other. It's a spectrum. Where are you on the spectrum? Most pantsers I know, even though they don't have an outline, they start with, you know, a goal or an end in mind, right? Or they start with a character in a setting with a problem, like your basics of story. The plotters I know like to have the plan, and some of them will write, you know, 50-page outlines, and that used to be me. But as I've written more books and gotten my craft down a little bit better, I find that I plan less and less, and I have to plan less and less. And no matter how much I plan, I'll get halfway through the book and go, oh my God, I didn't realize that's what I needed to do. Or I'll plan the first half really well, and the second half is just like, and the good guys fight the bad guys, and the good guys win. It's like, well, yeah, of course they do, because it's modern commercial fiction, you know, like that's what I want to happen. My stories all kind of end with a hopeful note. You know, I like seeing the outcomes where good guys win. Those are the kinds of stories I enjoy. But that's not a plot. That's not an ending. You know, you have to be specific. So usually I'll have a really solid idea what's going to happen in the first quarter to 50% of a book. And then I check in at each major milestone, right? Like at the first plot point, I'll stop and be like, okay, read back what I got. Look what's next in the next act. You know, where am I going in the future? Do I have an end in mind? Do I have a goal? As long as I have those things and the motivations all line up, you know, the energy of the story will take me through. And I get stuck. Everybody gets stuck, but yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I plot less and less. My outlines used to be like pages and pages. I'd have note cards laid out all over the table. I think my Instagram profile still has like old photos of like plotting note cards where I was planning it out act by act, chapter by chapter. Now it's a little bit less. Like my outlines can just be a few pages if I have a good idea of the characters.
Right. So do you feel then you have a kind of an intuition now of the beats you need to hit within these stories?
Yeah. I think that I've practiced it enough that I've absorbed the principles.
All right. So when you start with a new idea, because when I often start a new book, sometimes it's an opening scene, and sometimes, quite often for me, it's the ending. And I'm wondering, like, when you start a new project, is there a commonality? Like, do you see a certain part of the story in your head, or what is it that starts you going?
Yeah, I don't know. The inspirations are always different, but I've got to know where I'm going. I've got to know like the direction I'm going. And if I don't know exactly what the set piece of the climax is or the resolution is, I at least have an idea of like what journey the character is going to go on. And once I have the idea, like, you know, for the Eureka project, I said the original image was just a married couple who got separated and had to get back together, right? That's not much of a story, but that image was what started me on the path. And then I had to figure out, like, well, who are they? What do they do? How did they get separated? Why? And answer all those questions. So once I have the spark, then I go back and I do the work, right? Like I figure the character out, and I've taken enough education around storytelling that I know like the basics of story, and I know kind of what I need. Like you need conflict, you need motivation. I need a really good idea of this character. Sometimes I'll like write a short story as the character to get an idea of the voice, and then I'll write the novel, right? So it's kind of like a test run for this voice, for this story. And again, I don't need everything, but I need enough. Like I need to have a good character who has a goal, like a motivation, and conflict. And then I need to put them in a setting that is very clear to me. A lot of my books are set in Austin for that reason, but the space opera books are set in far future, right? So that took more world building. And then I need to know what the problem is. And if I know those three things and they're compelling enough, they'll drive me to the end that I have in mind. Whether that's kind of vague and fuzzy or super crystal clear. You know, I think there are certainly books I've written where I have no idea what the end set piece is going to be. And there are other books I've written where I have that end set piece in mind the entire time. And it's just like, how do I get them there? But every project's different.
I was wondering, so you do write a short piece with your characters to get to know them, because I've started sort of doing that in a kind of 1,000-word bio surrounded by the kind of let's say in the vein of something that represents the character or in a style. Do you feel that helps you maybe avoid the surprises that characters sometimes bring in the middle of the story?
Yeah, Yeah, I think it does. I'm also kind of mercenary about it now. Like the story I wrote for Captain Nevers, which is the space opera main character, turned into the novella spare part. So I sell that novella too. So I don't want to like. I used to write extensive character sheets, and now I just don't do that anymore. I'd rather actually write them in a story, like in actually the context. But certainly what I find when a character surprises me so much that it like breaks the story, it's often because I don't know the character that well. I don't actually know them or how they're going to react. And when they start reacting like people in the middle of the book, sometimes I have to go back and fix the beginning to make them act like people the whole time so that reaction is consistent. So if the character's doing something unexpected in the middle of the book, either you didn't know who they were yet, or you've made them inconsistent for some reason, right? If a character, like, people never do anything, people might do something unexpected, but they never do anything out of character.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, is because character sheets are always brought up as something right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've never found them terribly useful. I don't visualize my characters
Yeah.
that way, and I find it much,
Yeah.
like you say, much more important to understand the actual person in the character, rather than, I don't care what
Mm-hmm.
they look like, to be honest.
Yeah.
I almost leave that up to the reader's imagination most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
like the personality of the character is really what drives. And so do you feel that your stories are, would you call them more character driven stories?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you
Yeah,
build
definitely.
the story and plot around the character to some degree, and the character motivations.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be, because the story is character first, right? It's the character in the setting with the problem. If you don't have the character or what their problem is, then there's no story. It's about a person and what happens to them. There are certainly exceptions to this, right? Especially in the literary area, where it's like more about the tone or more about like Ursula K. Le Guin. I forget the name of the story, but she has this wonderful, weird, dark fantasy story around a town that doesn't have a specific character. The character ends up being the town, and you could do that in a small way. I have this book over here. N.K. Jemisin wrote The City We Became, and the short version of that, I think, was much more about New York, the city, and the different boroughs, and how the boroughs were people and how they interacted, because it was more of like it just had a broader scope. Whereas to sustain a novel, she really focuses more on one character. At least at the beginning. I haven't finished reading the book yet, so I don't know how many characters are in the book, but you can see it starts like, this character is in a setting with a problem. It's very character driven, whereas the short piece could sustain something that was a little bit more omniscient.
Right. And in terms of the practical side of the writing, I understand. Well, I'm guessing that you use Scrivener to compile your stuff,
I do.
because you have a
Yeah, I do.
book called Scrivener Superpowers you wrote.
Yeah. Yeah, I use it to write. I don't use it to compile anymore. I use Vellum to make my ebooks and print books, but yeah, I still use Scrivener to write. I love the binder structure, right? Like this ability to look at a book not one page at a time, or one column of text that goes endlessly down, right? Because if you're in Word, you look at a single column of text that goes endlessly down. Yeah, sure, you can have like 2-page layout or whatever, but it's just one column. There's no folder structure, right? And like I said, I'm a systems thinker, and I used to do programming, and I know computers really well, and I just never understood why they didn't have a folder structure in a Word document. It doesn't make sense to me. When I found Scrivener, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And then I could focus on one scene at a time, right? If scenes, I think of scenes as like the building block of story. So I can focus one scene at a time, and I don't have to wrap my head around a whole novel. I just focus on one scene. This scene is going to have a beginning, middle, and end, right? It has a hook. It maybe has a cliffhanger. And it's just that one atomic unit. And Scrivener's cool because you could then move things around if you have to, or you can store research and, character sheets and settings and notes. And I all the time, I like dictate into my phone. I'll do a little brainstorm and then just take the transcript and throw it in Scrivener. It's like a brainstorm note-taking thing. So if I'm stuck, I'll just walk around the block talking to my phone and then put that in Scrivener. And that way I can have everything there. And the manuscript is in this folder, but all my brainstorms and research and outlines and planning and, photos that I found, concept art, like whatever it is, it can all go in one place. So it's great to have it all in one place. Scrivener's fantastic at that. I know there's some other softwares that do it now. Some competitors to Scrivener, which is great. Like I love a good, healthy, competitive marketplace for writing tools, but I still use Scrivener. I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask if you compiled all of your research, etc., into the same one. Well, obviously you do. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I keep it in the same document. Yeah, but that stuff just like lives in that document. I can't tell you how many pages of notes or outlines or I used to, if I'm starting up a new story and trying to like visualize the characters, I'll go like cast them, right? You can use AI now to like visualize your characters. You can use something like Midjourney. I used to just find celebrity photos or stock photos and just pull them into Scrivener. Oh, this is like my whole cast. Are they interesting enough? Are they all the same, right? Do they have the same tone? You can kind of see if you hold them there, and Scrivener has this cool feature called the cork board. We could see each file on a board and you can pin a photo to each card, right? So I could actually visualize my cast there, right? Is that a cast that somebody would want to make a movie out of? Does it have enough representation? Does it have young and old, male and female, black and white and brown? I mean, I think that diversity is super important, and being able to visualize my cast and my characters and my story really helps me do that. And Scrivener is a great tool for that.
I was going to ask, I used to use Pinterest, sort of search through Pinterest for settings and things like that. But so one of the things that's interesting when you move from Word into Scrivener is, as you mentioned, the scene style, which takes a bit of getting used to for someone who's used Word quite a lot. And you do write, so as you mentioned, the scenes individually then as a complete scene and then move them around. How long would a scene typically be? Would it be for you equivalent to a chapter then, or?
Most of the time my books are one scene chapters, but towards the end of books, especially when I write multiple points of view, I'll have a chapter that'll like have different points of view, or like cut from one location to another, or just kind of cut out the boring bits and break up the scenes a little bit. So all of my books have a few chapters that are multiple scenes. Whereas you look at somebody like James Patterson, he basically only writes one scene chapters, right? And they're short. And that's great. Keeps the reader moving, keeps you turning pages. It's very exciting. It's very fast paced. I do enjoy his thrillers. But yeah, in Scrivener, you want to write each file should be a scene, because if you do compile it later, it's a system, right? It's a folder structure with files, and it compiles the book based on rules you apply. So if you group things into scenes and then you group those scenes into chapter folders, then when it compiles, it can put scene breaks between the scenes for you. So that's why you do it. I do it because I like the visual. I like being able to see my story structurally. But now when I write a book, it's like manuscript folder, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and then occasionally I'll like have sub scenes, right? But it's pretty straightforward. But my chapters don't tend to be all that long. If I were writing epic fantasy, it'd be different, right? Yeah, epic fantasy, often they have parts or acts, and then they have long chapters, right? Like a 10,000 word chapter is often going to have a couple different scenes in it. Especially in epic fantasy when they have multiple points of view characters. Like it can get really complicated. So it really depends what genre you're writing. When I was writing that nonfiction book on Scrivener, I used the individual like basic building block was kind of a scene, but it's a nonfiction book. So it's not really a scene, properly speaking. It's just like a section, right? And that thing has like 4 layers, because there's like the Mac section, the Windows section, chapter 1, and then all these different parts. And so like they're very short in each section, but they compile into a greater narrative.
And so what has been your publishing experience as an indie author then? Because while you said you used to compile, first of all, through Scrivener, which I also agree I didn't really like very much. But I use now something similar to Vellum. I think there's some PC alternatives and some online alternatives. In terms of publishing then, what has been your experience, going narrow, going wide, Amazon, etc.? And what do you sort of wish for the near future of indie authors and indie publishing?
Oh, those are big questions. Well, my experience has been just like experimentation. I've tried a bunch of different things. What I've settled on is Scrivener for writing and Vellum for compiling my ebooks and print books. And now I buy my own. I don't know if buy is even the right word. I hire artists to make illustrations for my work, and then I do the cover layout myself. That's another skill I had to learn as part of, you know, being an indie author, is like producing and publishing your own books. I've even published a few short stories, mostly with covers I've done myself. So, you know, that's been my experience. I've tried a bunch of different stuff. I used to use Scrivener. I abandoned it eventually. Vellum is great. And like you said, there's a lot of different alternatives. There's web-based alternatives. Draft to Digital has a ebook compiler now. So when I started in 2015, there were just fewer options, is the truth. Vellum didn't exist, right? Once Vellum came out, I was like all in. It's so easy. I used to spend so much time compiling books in Scrivener and trying to get this freaking formatting right and checking it. And it was a pain in the neck. So Vellum saves me time, and that's worth the money. Like, I don't even think about how much I spent on it. It's a wonderful tool. It does a great job. It's consistent, and it's easy to use. And that's what matters, is that I don't want to waste time doing things that I don't need to do. I want to be spending my time writing books, spending time with family, you know, going hiking, climbing, whatever, not fiddling around with the Scrivener compile function. Like, it's just not a good use of my time. So anyway, as for what I want for the future of indie publishing, like, I don't know. I don't think we're really settled yet, right? Like, the industry is still in flux. I don't think it's really, it just hasn't settled. Things that have happened in the last, like, there are just major changes that have happened in the last year. Changes with acquisitions of companies, with, you know, the growth of audiobooks is still staggering. A lot more authors are moving to Kickstarters, or at least adding Kickstarters into the mix, moving into direct sales. I count myself among those numbers. I'm trying different channels, different options. And each career is unique, you know, like, I don't think that there is necessarily a bad choice overall. In terms of your indie publishing options today, the choice is just what's right for you and your personality and your life and your career. I've been hybrid. I was a hybrid published author as well for a while. I published a series called The Gun Files with Aethon Books, who's a sci-fi fantasy publisher. They have a big lit RPG imprint. They're great. I think they're doing some really cool stuff in the, you know, small press scene right now. There are other cool small presses, you know, a lot of them started by indie authors. Then, of course, there's the traditional publishing game, and there's the indie game. Where I've decided to go, and where I'm going in the future, is something that suits my personality and my business, and just my lifestyle, which is, my books are wide. I run Kickstarter campaigns because I love that stuff. It's super fun for me. One of the best book publishing experiences of my life was running that first Relics of the Ancients Kickstarter. It was a blast. It's a ton of work, right? But I just really enjoyed it. It was super successful. We raised $13,000 for the original trilogy. It funded the audio production. It helped me launch the book into retailers, and now I'm selling those books direct. And that's great. Like, I think that path for me makes sense. I want my books wide. I don't want to be on the KU hamster wheel. Personally, I don't write fast enough, especially not with a full-time job, right, and 3 kids. Yeah. It's just not, like, I'm not going to write a book a month. I don't enjoy that. I don't have time for that. My books take me, 6 to 9 months to write, and that's the pace I've been able to sustain. And I can sustain it over the long term. It's something that I can do for years, and it's worked for me so far. So that's the direction I'm going to go. I got the rights to the Gun Files back. I'll be relaunching them later this summer as a Kickstarter, and then I'll release them wide again. The audiobooks are still with Audible Studios. They have a wonderful narrator, Oliver Wyman. He just does a bang up job. And I'm about to write the 4th Gun Files novel. So I'm re-listening back through the audiobooks rather than rereading the paper copies or the ebook copies. I just pop my headphones in and go on a walk and listen. And he's wonderful. Such a great actor. But I got the rights to the ebooks and the print books back, and I'm going to republish those myself. So that's the future for me. I tried some, more traditional deals. I think maybe it's me, maybe it's just where I am. I don't think it was my favorite experience. I much prefer having control over my publishing, my marketing, my sales, my pricing. everything works together, and the larger the catalog gets, the more it works, right? Like when I had one book, it was really hard. When I had a trilogy, it was still really hard. And now that I have a larger back catalog, it's a different game. And so the game for me is wide and long term and sustainable. And if I can do that for years, then I can build a real business.
Did you have a point where you felt it was taking off then?
I think the Kickstarter was like a new plateau. I don't know if there was like one pivotal moment, but there certainly have been plateaus, right? Like finishing my first book was a plateau. And then it was like, oh, now I have to sell this thing. Finishing the trilogy, right? The Translocator trilogy, plateau. Podium Publishing produced the audiobook of that. That was a great moment for me. Getting the deal with Aethon and Audible Studios was awesome. At the time, it was great. It was the right thing. And then we launched those 3 books at the beginning of a pandemic. It's tough. It's tough, this business. And I didn't have control to remarket or publish those books or change them. And, it is what it is. But I think that was 2020. In 2021, I did the Kickstarter. That went really well. I released the books on retailers. They've done well. I'm super happy with them. It's my best earning series by far now, at least in relative timeframes. And yeah, that's it. I'm kind of rambling now, but I have a lot of thoughts on the subject. If you hadn't noticed.
Yeah, I know we could talk for hours on just self-publishing and so.
Right.
One thing before we get on to the gun files, which I wanted to talk about, was I just wanted one more thing on comments on Kickstarter itself, because so I've been around this sort of indie publishing since around 2006, 2007, and in the early days, Kickstarter was quite a big thing. A lot of authors were trying to use Kickstarter to sort of create a revenue stream. And then it sort of disappeared for authors. It just wasn't deemed as very successful and useful. And now it seems to be making a comeback. So I'm just wondering if you had a few words on that and sort of how, if you could give like a very concise, I don't know if it's possible, a paragraph maybe on what the key points of making a successful author Kickstarter are.
Well, there's a lot more novels being published on Kickstarter now than I think there were. Let's say that the demarcation point was like Brandon Sanderson's $42 million campaign or whatever it ended up being. I don't know the exact number, but like ridiculous success, right? Best Kickstarter ever. Not just in books, like that's the best Kickstarter they've ever done, ever. That's incredible. And I think that really opened the eyes of indies and traditional publishers. Now, I would not say that Kickstarter disappeared during the time that you're speaking of, because I remember back in early days of Kindle, especially early days of KU, people were doing Kickstarters, but there just weren't as many. But people like Michael J. Sullivan never stopped doing Kickstarters, right? Like he writes epic fantasy novels. He's a traditionally published author originally, but when he went indie, like he's done these incredible campaigns. Also, KU never really served comic book creators. And so comic books have been strong on Kickstarter for a while. And if you look back in their archives, you'll find plenty of novels. Robert, I think, what's his last name? Crozy. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name. Sorry, Robert. But he did a bunch of Kickstarters. I modeled mine on some of his that were pretty successful. And that was well before, Brandon Sanderson blew the platform up in the best way possible, right? But yeah, I think now it's more viable and there's also more education around it. So you're seeing more authors move there. I think what happened in that time period that you're talking about is that KU overshadowed Kickstarter. People were like, oh, I can make more money rapid releasing into KU. Let's go make some money here. And, that worked for a lot of authors. And so people just didn't bother with Kickstarters. There was no model for it. There was no education around it. It was hard. Direct marketing is difficult. It was a lot of work. Whereas KU, especially in the early days, you slap a pre-made cover on that baby and you throw it up and it just sells, right? People just read it because readers were hungry and the market was being subsidized by Amazon.
Yeah, I guess it's fair. It sort of disappeared from my awareness in terms of authors. You're definitely, the comic books have been there for a while, and I'm aware that it's definitely been a big thing for comic books. Yeah, but it is interesting to see that. Well, at least from my perspective, I do see a lot more authors going on to Kickstarter now. Yeah. Again, so I'm going to have to look into that myself as well.
It's because there are courses for it, right? There are people teaching how to do it, and there are people encouraging others to do it. And as the KU page read payout drops, people are looking for wide alternatives, right? Or Kickstarter to launch the book and then go into KU. So people are starting to see alternate paths because people have actually walked those paths and paved them out for people. And now it's being, there's more education around it. I think there's like 2 or 3 Kickstarter courses that have popped up in the last year and a half that are excellent, right? When I was doing my Kickstarter, Dean Wesley Smith had a free course on how to do a novel Kickstarter, and his company, WMG Publishing, has been doing Kickstarters for years as part of their, like, a core part of their business. So, there's just more information now, and there's more of a model. And once there's more of a model, that's where you see the growth. And then, of course, with Brandon Sanderson's campaign hitting the headlines, there's a lot more awareness around Kickstarter in the public eye. And so I think people are just more accepting of it now for fiction.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. So switching on to some of your books specifically, the Gun Files is one that it did attract me. They're all interesting. They all have interesting subjects, but because I have a noir one of my own that I'm working on, it felt like a noir.
Oh, cool.
Kind of noir bounty hunter rather than a noir detective. It feels very inspired by Men in Black, which I think you do comment on in the description. Maybe you could just walk us through sort of a little bit of intro on the book, and then what your process was for sort of creating this book. And it's set in Austin as well, your hometown. Well, not now, your adopted hometown.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's kind of my love letter to Austin in one way. And it's a super fun book. It definitely is a little bit noir. The other thing that people have called it is like a sci-fi Harry Dresden. That instead of, a wizard at the center, it's this kind of bumbling bounty hunter. It's also very light and fun. There's a lot of, humor and comedy in there. I don't consider myself a comedy writer. I'm more of like a mystery adventure writer, but there's a lot of pop culture jokes and references in there, and some tongue-in-cheek moments that are super fun that make those stories entertaining. So yeah, I wanted to write a mystery, like kind of like Harry Dresden, but I wanted to do it sci-fi, and I wanted it to be in Austin. And this idea that came from Men in Black is the alien underworld, right? That exists just under our noses. There are aliens here. We just don't know about them. And that discovery process is what he goes through. That's why people compare it to Men in Black, and why I did in the description, because he finds this underworld of aliens in Austin, Texas, and it blows his mind, and he has to come to terms with this new reality. And then he's the only human that knows. And rather than chasing down a human bail jumper, he ends up chasing an alien in the first book. And then he gets roped into off-world culture, and people start hiring him to track people down, but not people, track aliens down. And so he kind of gets roped into that. And so I did 3 books, and that was the series that was published with Aethon, and Audible Studio bought the audio rights, and Oliver Wyman narrated them. And yeah, he has a pretty good fan base, so it did okay on audio. And I think of all my books, I get the most reader letters about that one.
All right. I was curious, were any of the aliens in the story inspired by sort of actual experiences within Austin? Did you go around the city sort of looking at, that could be an alien, that could be an alien?
Yeah. Well, Austin's tagline is "Keep Austin Weird," right? Like, they pride themselves on their eccentricity. And I've always loved that about the city. When I first moved here, I spent a lot of time on the east side, which is the area of the city east of Interstate 35. At the time, it was, still kind of not as affluent. Still a little dangerous in some parts when I moved here. And there are a lot of dive bars and, hole in the wall places that are super fun to explore. So I spent a lot of time exploring the city and its eccentricities. There are certainly some things from Austin, like real life Austin, in the book. For example, there's the Museum of the Weird on 6th Street, has all sorts of shrunken heads and Siamese twins, and the Bigfoot footprints that are caught in plaster, and all this sort of stuff. That it's just a wonderful little tourist spot on 6th Street that has a museum of curiosities, and it's wonderful. It's weird and strange, and so I put that in the book because I love it. And yeah, there's just some odd things about Austin. There's I forget what year it made headlines, but there was a guy that lived in Austin for a long time that was really into like extreme body modification, and he's called the Lizard Man.
Okay.
I mentioned him once or twice in the books. He has like, split his tongue and put like studs in his face to look like a reptile, just like super odd. And just, what's wonderful about this city is people just let people be themselves. But the city is also changing. And I think that's the other thing that I put into the book is there's a couple themes of the book, right? Like appearances can be deceiving, first of all. If we're talking about an alien underworld, they can't be seen by humanity. And so appearances really are literally deceiving in this book. The other thing is that the city is changing. And I think that kind of comes through as kind of a background of the book, is the city's evolving, it's growing, it's changing. And in the book, it's changing because aliens are suddenly there and they're starting to come out and be exposed, and there's like a galactic war that's using Earth as a battleground in a greater conflict. So that's like the through line of the book. But in Austin, in real life, like it's growing massively. We're the 10th largest city in the US now. The area of the east side where the book is set is totally different now than it was then. Like it's so much more commercial now. There are like fancy hotels and strip malls and all sorts of stuff over there that wasn't there when I first moved in. When I first moved here in 2012, and I'm a latecomer to this city, right? Like the real weird Austin was like back in the 80s and 90s. But even when I got here, like the east side was this charming, quaint little hipster town full of little bungalows and mom and pop businesses. And now it's just like corporate and big and shiny. And every time my wife and I go downtown or the east side, we look around, we're like, where are we? This city is so different. But, that's what happens to cities. That's what happens to cultures. They grow and they change.
Yeah. I'm curious if a lot of the newcomers are from the South or from the West.
Well, I would say that the number one, so of the people who move here, number one is from other areas of Texas. It's the people who don't feel like they belong in other parts of Texas come to Austin to be weird, and that's still wonderful. The city still has that attraction. It also has a lot of investment money in technology. Big companies, big tech companies are here, and people come here for work. That's the other reason. And also, like, it's a rock and roll city, right? South by Southwest is here. ACL music festivals here. Some of the greatest rock and roll artists in the world, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, has a statue downtown. This is still Austin, the rock and roll city. So there's a lot of music and culture here and great food. So people come from all around Texas to move here. I would say beyond that, like during the pandemic, a lot of people from California moved to Texas. A lot of companies from California moved to Texas. And Texas has done a good job being perceived as a business friendly state. I think in some ways they are, in some ways they aren't, but that's the perception. And so a lot of businesses come here, and that's part of the reason the city's grown. And with the growth comes different needs, right? Like they need a transit system, they need bigger highways, they need better roads, they need safer roads. We need more housing, like you wouldn't believe. And the skyline is just totally transformed.
You had an interesting comment with one of the characters in the gun files, which I just wanted to mention. I think it's going to become maybe more interesting moving forward, but also a bit of a throwback to the past. And this is one of I don't want to give away because it's kind of in the middle of this character. So basically, they're making the comment of when asked about their name, right? Whether and they said, "Oh, it's a title, it's not a name," because titles are transferable and names are not. And it struck me that this is something that could be, well, first of all, relatable to the trans movement, because if you're changing they're changing a lot of things, and it would seem almost like you say, like a title is more transferable than a name. And then it made me think of last names in general. If you go back in history,
That's
most
true.
of our last names came from titles, effectively, right? Like Smith and things like that. So it's interesting. Do you think that might actually catch on moving forward, something like that, where we return to using titles for names?
Yeah, I mean, names are symbols, right? Words are symbols, and I think people change their names to be perceived how they want to be perceived. This is why we're having the pronoun debate in our country right now. I don't know, like you said, a lot of our last names were based on our profession or our location, right? or the son of so-and-so, so that they could be recognized. So it was really just a symbol to get more specific for that person, right? Still, when people get married now, a lot of people change their names. Now, a lot of people don't, and that's a decision that you can make too. But yeah, I do think titles are transferable. Like, think about CEO of a company, right? A CEO of a company changes out all the time, but the title remains the same, and their responsibilities remain the same. So yeah, I don't know. It was kind of an offhand remark in the book for sure, but I always think of that character. In the book, he's called the Gatekeeper, which I don't think is a spoiler. But the Gatekeeper is the symbol of authority in this world, right? It's his job to, well, not his job. He's more like a mob boss than he is like a CEO, but he kind of governs who comes and goes from Earth. And the reason that aliens have to live in secret on Earth is because the Federation laws that say that they have to do that or they'll be punished. And the Federation sends, agents to discipline people and enforce the law. And the Gatekeeper is tolerated as this kind of mob boss force. But certainly if it wasn't him, it would be another person, right? Somebody else would fill that vacuum.
Yeah. Anytime you create this kind of need for an underground, I guess, you have kind of like the bureaucracy gives you certain rules that people don't want to live under, so they'll create their own sort of hidden rules in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which brings me to the bureaucracy of the story. Then there's also a very heavily bureaucratic galactic civilization, so we say.
Yeah, totally.
Were they patterned after anything, or
it's funny because I'm rereading it now, and of course, as people in a modern civilization, we deal with bureaucracy all the time, right? Like, you got to do your taxes every year. I've also lived in many different countries and had to deal with different countries' bureaucracies, right? So I've been in the U.S. I spent 3 years in Canada, going to college and living and working there, and then finally in Germany, which is famous for its bureaucracy, right? Like, thank you, Franz Kafka. I also in college read a lot of Kafka, and I think some of his like feelings about bureaucracy have crept into my thinking. I mean, he kind of exaggerates and satirizes bureaucracy in his stories, and in mine, the bureaucracy of the Federation is kind of like the bureaucracy of our country, really. And in most of my books, there's some kind of Senate or Parliament and some kind of political thing going on in the background. I think it gives the story a nice flavor, something different, where one character can be dealing with political problems and another one can be doing the action adventure stuff. Like, if every scene is somebody punching somebody else, it's just kind of boring and same. So I like to mix in the bureaucracy and political issues without like hitting people over the head with it, So what was fun about that is I needed a reason to have the aliens keep themselves secret, right? And in Men in Black, it's the governing body of Men in Black that enforces that secrecy, right? But I didn't want to have I didn't want to just rip their story off, because that's boring and it wasn't the story I was trying to tell. But I wanted, just like in the Dresden Files or a lot of urban fantasy, right? Like, magic is the secret society. That was part of what the genre I was writing. I wanted to write a detective story with a secret society, but I didn't want it to be fantasy. I wanted it to be sci-fi. And certainly my brand of sci-fi is not hard science fiction, right? Like, I'm not following the laws of physics. I'm having fun with it. Like, there are a bunch of alien species and some made up technology. In book 2, there's this whole idea of the quantum architecture that's really interesting, where spaces inside are different than spaces outside, and they're connected in unusual ways. But anyway, like, about the bureaucracy, I thought it was interesting, and it provided a world building rule that gave us a good reason for everybody to want to stay secret, right? They're secret because they're afraid of that bureaucracy coming down on their neck. And that's very believable, right? It's something that we all live with our lives, right? Like, if we are not perfectly upstanding, law-abiding citizens, like, there is still the fear of somebody coming down and enforcing that law. This is why even good law-abiding people feel their heart pounding when they look in the rearview mirror and there's a cop behind them, right? It's not because you did anything wrong. It's just like, oh God, somebody with that kind of power is behind me, and I don't know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Which is a interesting statement on our societies itself, but
yeah. Well, I think at least in our countries, police don't always have a reputation for doing the right thing.
Well, exactly.
That's just the truth. That's the world we live in. And you hope they do the right thing. And I think most of them probably do most of the time. But there's always the exceptions. And people can know the statistics, right? Like my cousin hates flying. She knows the statistics. The statistics are clear. Flying is very safe, right? What's that old stat? Like you're more likely to die in a plane crash, or you're more likely to get attacked by a pig. Yeah,
whatever it is.
You're gonna get killed by a pig more likely than you're gonna die in a plane crash. But every time she gets on a plane, she's terrified.
Yeah.
And it's not something that's rational, but it's something that's very human, that's very emotionally driven. And we can have all the statistics in the world, but I'm telling you, if a cop pulls up behind me and his lights are on, I'm gonna panic and I'm gonna pull over, because that's just like a natural reaction. It's the instinct. So yeah, I think the bureaucracy can be very scary. It can also be very cold and impersonal, and that's part of the reason it's scary. And that I think is why all of the aliens on Earth in those books are terrified of the bureaucracy, because they're like, I don't know when the peacekeepers are coming, but I don't want them here, right? Like, stay out of my business, stay out of my life. And so all the aliens on Earth in this story have that attitude, that like, leave me be, libertarian mindset, where they just want to be left alone, and the Federation can fight their wars somewhere else. Like, I'm in retirement, right? I came here to get away. I came here to start a new life. And I just think that's super interesting, because I've always kind of felt that about Austin, is that a lot of people come here and a lot of people leave. And it's kind of like a pass-through city. Like, a lot of our friend group has come for work or for fun or with their friends, and then left for various reasons, like work, life, that stuff happens. It's kind of a city of transients in that way. I love it too. I call it the boomerang city, because they always come back, right? They come back to visit, they come back to live. But it's kind of like a parallel to this book, where the off-worlders are coming here to escape, right? To start a new life, to get away.
Right. Yeah, I suppose any kind of authority, there's a natural fear, because it can be abused as well, and quite often will be eventually in its lifetime. The process will evolve till it is abused, and then it has to be reset back to reasonable levels. It was interesting, the discussion of hard sci-fi, because a lot of science fiction authors do say, clarify, I'm not hard sci-fi or anything. But I always have that view that we have our particular vision of, hard sci-fi has to conform to physics. Of course, as we're learning, like we're going through another period where we're realizing that we don't know as much as we thought we knew, right? And so
is that just always?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it comes around like every time we go through this transition period. I think the last big one was sort of maybe in the 80s, when Scientific American declared that the end of science, basically, because we didn't need to learn anything else. We knew everything, according to them. And it really is just, like, how do we know really what hard sci-fi is? We don't for sure even know that light speed is a limit that's not passable, for example. And that's one of the core foundations of hard sci-fi, isn't it? So I keep a pretty loose vision of that myself.
I do too, and I like both, right? Like, I love Andy Weir's books, and like, he's an engineer. I listened to an interview where he said that he actually wrote a program to calculate the orbital diagrams that he used in The Martian. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's not my passion. In his new book, not Artemis, what was the other one? Oh, Project Hail Mary. Loved that book. Absolutely loved it. And everything that he puts in that book is, to our current knowledge, plausible, right? Possible. I think we could actually do a lot of those things. And all of his inventions in the book like seem very based in physics, that we know. But he also said that he put in The Martian that there was no water on Mars. And then later we found water on Mars, so our knowledge changes as new evidence appears. Now, my particular brand of what I write, I would not consider hard sci-fi, right? Like, there's faster than light travel, there's hyperspace jumps, there's, Ansible technology with quantum entanglement, but I'm always consistent with the rules within that universe. So if it's this way, it's going to be consistently that way through the rules. But genres are a set of reader expectations, right? I don't want people to think that my books are hard science fiction, because they're going to be disappointed in that read. If you come to the Gun Files expecting a hard-nosed, hard sci-fi noir thriller, like, you're going to be disappointed. That's not the kind of book it is. It's more of a fun, humorous take on action adventure sci-fi mystery, right? It's not that book. So the reason I differentiate or distinguish is because readers expect a certain thing, and sci-fi readers want the hard physics. They want, the blasters to be technically accurate, and that's fine. They love that stuff, and they should be able to enjoy that. I don't have any problem with that. I just don't want them to think that that's what I write.
Yeah, there is certainly that segment of the sci-fi readership that has those very stringent expectations. Definitely, they actually scare me. I think those people.
Yeah, they're a bit hardcore, aren't they?
Yeah,
and I love
they
them.
are.
I love you guys, but you guys are hardcore. And like, if they messed up the physics in The Expanse, they're the ones that are on Reddit complaining about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So moving on to very quickly. To your one of their series is the Relics of the Ancients, which is a kind of a space opera, I guess would be safe to call it.
Yep.
Maybe you could give us a little blurb on that, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion before we move on to the end segment.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch for that is a starfighter pilot crash lands during an alien invasion. And while he's on that planet trying to survive, he discovers ancient alien relics that have powers to defend him against the Krill, who are the ones, the species invading this planet. So he finds these ancient pieces of technology, and it unlocks a whole ancient mystery, right? So they start digging through the past and defending against the Krill, who are expanding now again. And so there's a whole like galactic war in the past, and then there's this ancient species. So the dynamic between the three species is super fun and interesting for me. One is extinct, but they left all this stuff behind. Then there's humanity, which is kind of developed into a future society that's multiplanetary. We're now a multiplanetary species, and we have faster than light travel and spaceships. But a lot of this technology was gifted to them by the Telos before they officially departed the galaxy. And then there's this invading xeno hive mind called the Krill, and they are horribly violent. I kind of modeled them after the Zerg in StarCraft, because I freaking love that game. I love that story, and it's just been really fun to write. And it's there's certainly like fast and light travel and Ansibles, like I explained. They have interstellar communication that's instantaneous. Like that's not hard sci-fi, but it allows for a really fun story, and it allows me to explore this like sprawling universe that is super fun. It's very deep. I can write in it forever and never get bored because it's so big. And so yeah, I wrote 6 books in that series. The novellas are called Starfighter Origins, and then the main series of novels is called Relics of the Ancients, and that's the one that I launched on Kickstarter. We even designed a model, a little miniature of the Starfighter on the book cover for the campaign.
Oh, wow.
So it's a super fun experience, and yeah, it's I think in the time frame since it's been live, it's been my best-selling series. I'm going to continue to write in it, but those 6 books complete the first arc, and the 3 novels, and then each novella is a prequel about one of the main characters in the novels.
Right. So I was going to ask you, because you did mention it in the blurb about StarCraft 2, because I used to play that quite a lot as well.
Great game.
What I'm curious then is, because as you described it, you can see sort of the
parallels,
pattern after the 3. Writing somewhat consciously around this, how aware did you have to be of not copying content from StarCraft?
Yeah, like I certainly didn't copy the storyline or anything like that. It's also inspired by Battlestar Galactica, right? Like a story about starfighter pilots, but there are no Cylons in mine, right? And no evil robots trying to kill humanity. So same with StarCraft too, right? Like they have the Zerg, the Protoss, and the humans, and that's about all I took from there. They don't have any of these like ancient relics or any of that stuff. So I kind of like pick and choose from different franchises and genres and stories that I love. I mean, that's what I'm often doing, is kind of remixing things in my own voice and my own style, and kind of doing something a little bit different. What I loved about StarCraft 2 is the dynamic between the 3 species. And that's really what I took inspiration from, was, these 3 species are so different and so similar, and like, where did they come from, and why are they here, and how do we achieve some kind of ecosystem balance if we all have to live together or cohabitate? So that's really interesting for me. So I kind of modeled that after StarCraft 2, but it kind of stops there. Like, I don't want to steal from the other stories. I don't want to there are plenty of books with faster than light travel, right? And there's also like there's a lot of time where the admiral's on the bridge, and that it's very Star Trek, right? Like she's on the bridge giving orders. So yeah, I pull from all sorts of different inspirations, but those are the three that really come to mind. And it helps readers kind of center around like, what genre is this? What kind of story am I going to be reading if they can compare it to those two things? And everybody I know who likes StarCraft or played StarCraft as a kid, who's like my age, like loves this book. They just love it.
So I'm curious the way you've described it. It would be better described as a space opera than a military sci-fi, for example.
Yes. Although, yeah, it's technically both, right? It's a space fleet novel, right? Where there's a space navy, there's an admiral, there's two starfighter pilots. One of the really fun things about writing this story was that I got to consult with pilots in the making of the story, right? In the development of the rank system, in like, military, rules and decorum, and like, what would they do, what wouldn't they do, what's appropriate for a commander, and then I got to change some things, to tweak it to fit like my vision. So my dad's an Air Force pilot, retired, but he was a flight instructor for years, so I got to talk to him about like how planes work and what would a StarCraft look like, and how would they behave in atmosphere versus out of atmosphere. And I got to talk to some other pilots I know about like different flight, different so in the first book, Captain Nevers gets stranded on this world during an evacuation. He's on his own. If you crash land or into enemy territory in the military today, the U.S. military teaches people this process called SERI, which is survive, evade, resist, escape. Right. It's your process for how you survive in enemy territory. So I got to use that in the story. That's very real. And I put it into the space opera story because it's a procedure, a process that works, and has worked for prisoners of war or people who found themselves in enemy territory and had to get back home. There's also another really interesting scene in that book where Captain Nevers is crash landing, or actually taking the spacecraft down through the atmosphere to try to land it safely, and how he gets out of the spin is how pilots actually get out of a spin. And so I have a beta reader named Jenny. She's wonderful. She's based in the UK. She was a commercial aviator herself, and so she helped me with some of the actual controls, and then I talked to some pilots I know about like the procedure, because again, if you're learning to fly, they teach you this because you need to know how to get out of a spin, otherwise you could crash and die. So I don't remember it off the top of my head, so I'm not gonna repeat it to mess it up, but there are certain things you do with the controls that will take you out of the spin. You kind of dive out of it.
Yeah. I've seen something recently about that as well. It's always interested me.
It's cool.
Yeah. What I was wondering, so well, we have to move on to the last segment shortly, but so this is a vast expanse of space opera, and we seem to have a dearth of space operas within the movies lately, like really quality ones. Star Wars has kind of died. And why do you think that is? Is this lack of imagination in Hollywood? I mean, there's tons of people writing good space operas. Why has it not been adapted?
Well, The Expanse is probably the most recent super popular space opera, but I think mainly the reason is that they're expensive to produce, and they need to be very successful to make their money back. Like, there's a lot of CGI involved in space operas now. There's a lot of like difficult filming with expensive technology. So I think that's the main reason. There's tons of good space operas out there.
It seemed, I'm not sure I 100% buy that. Maybe it scares away the initial investors, but Disney's on a big tear of losing money with many projects at the moment. So they don't seem to be adverse to losing money.
Well, they're not trying to lose money though, right? Like losing money is not their intention. It doesn't seem to be their intention. I mean, I think some projects just lose money, and part of the reason we always have remakes and sequels is because they know that franchise sells, right? So when they find one that sells, they're going to make it. Somebody took a chance on The Expanse, and I thought that was amazing. I think they did an incredible job of that. I'm
curious if we'll see this kind of thing relegated to television then, rather than movies, if cost is an issue. But clearly, they are losing money on some of their IPs. I mean, obviously they've run Star Wars into the ground basically, and they're doing a lot for some of the other ones as well. So, well, we'll see. So we'll have to move into the second segment of the show now. I think we're getting near the end. So quick lightning round of 5 questions, and then give you 2 big questions to finish it off.
Okay, I'm
So
ready.
lightning round is just pop culture, A and B, and I tailor them more or less to around your books,
Okay.
the themes, the ideas for your books. First question is Men in Black or X-Files?
Ooh, um, Men in Black.
Any reason? You just
It's just so fun. It's so fun. And I probably was too young when X-Files was aired. I love that story, but it just doesn't appeal to me the way that Men in Black always appealed to me.
right. So then I go Agent J or Mulder.
Mm. Um, I'm gonna go with Agent J.
Okay. So because of your gun files then, and the in the description you have baby Cthulhu. How do you pronounce that?
Mm.
So I'm asking you, Cthulhu or Dracula?
Oh, I think I never knew how to pronounce that word. First of all, I know some people say Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, yes,
Um,
that's probably
yeah,
what you would say.
Cthulhu is like the Lovecraft angle, but I always thought Dracula was a more compelling story. So Dracula.
Okay, so Dracula over Cthulhu. Okay, now I got the
Mm.
pronunciation right.
I don't
um,
know if I'm right.
no, I think so. I don't know why I was having a mind blank on that. Uh, Galaxy Quest. I was reminded of Galaxy Quest in some of the technology you had in the gun files, or
Mm.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm. I think Guardians of the Galaxy I enjoy better. Galaxy Quest was an interesting film. But it's more comedy, right? Like
Yeah,
there's certainly humor in the gun files and it's supposed to be kind of funny, but mostly I focus on the mystery and the adventure. I think yeah, Galaxy Quest is good, but it's just such a goofy movie. So goofy.
and then number 5, moving to Galactic Civilizations, Starfleet or the Galactic Republic of Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars. I always have to pick Star Wars.
Even now.
Even now, I loved The Mandalorian. Absolutely loved it. It has everything that I love in Star Wars, which is, there's no Jedi, right? But there's like the ancient lore, the order, the space battles, like it just has, and it also like the sci-fi western, like shoot what do you call it?
Showdowns.
Yeah, showdowns. See, I love that. Love that. And I guess there was Luke was in it for a little bit and Grogu has his force powers, right? But yeah, it just has everything I love about Star Wars. A lot of people I know love Rogue Swarm and they like that's the best Star Wars movie. I'm like it's the best Star Wars movie if you want an adult thriller with no lore, no Jedi, no magic, right? Like that's why you think it's the best Star Wars because it's the most adult Star Wars.
Mm.
I think the best Star Wars is the Mandalorian, like the good Mandalorian episodes, the best Mandalorian episodes.
First 2
A
seasons,
lot of
more or less.
yeah, the first 2 seasons were great, and they ended the third one so well. I mean, I just think like the lore of of Mandalore and how they went and explored the waters of Mandalore, and they like, and also it has what I love, like reviving ancient civilizations, right? Like that's my trope. If I can read any book, if it has ancient civilizations, like I'm in. It doesn't even need to be good. I just want that trope. I can never get tired of that trope. It's Stargate is another one that my Translocator books get compared to, right? And it's the same
Right.
thing. Like portals, I love portals and I love ancient civilizations. You put those two things together, like I don't even care who made it. Like, let me see it now.
Yeah, with Rogue One, there was some stuff in there I would have liked them to develop more, like you say, with regards to the lore.
Yeah,
There was some stuff I
totally.
really wanted to see, and they've never really done that.
I know. I mean, that's the amazing thing about space operas. There's so many directions they could go. And Disney often keeps going back to the Skywalkers, which is tiresome. I think people are over it. I think, it's time to do something different with Star Wars. And so the direction they're taking it now with The Mandalorian being the crux of the new generation of the franchise, I think is super smart because it gives us so many other avenues to explore. And then you have Rogue One and Andor as the thriller adult direction, right? So it's cool. Like, I don't know what they're going to do in the future. Obviously, the sequel trilogy of movies bombed. I have a lot of problems with that, but I've really enjoyed what they've done on TV.
Yeah, I wish they would have wrapped up the Skywalker series a bit better before they moved on. And I would love to see them do the Old Republic. I played the Star Wars MMO, and I would love to see a proper Old Republic.
It's so interesting because I think they're starting to play with it in video games and cartoons, but they haven't done it in like the live action shows or movies yet. And it's almost like, to a lot of people, it's not canon until it's in a live action movie or TV show, because a lot of people don't watch the cartoons and tons of people don't play the games. So it's interesting, but I do think it's a fun direction for them to explore. Such a rich universe. It's the reason I love it. I've always loved it.
Yeah. So onto the two big questions. So the first one I had is if it's based around your gun files again. So if off-worlders, so extraterrestrials, are actually among us, and there are many who believe they are, as depicted in the gun files or MIB. So why do you? You've presented ideas, but why do you think they would actually be hiding? And more importantly, what would be a safe and reasonable approach to, let's say, bringing them out openly and integrating them into human society? Or do you not think that's possible?
I don't think they would be able to stay in hiding. It doesn't seem feasible for me to stay in hiding for very long. Even if your technology is hyper advanced and you can hide perfectly well, it just doesn't seem feasible. I don't think, and granted, aliens, a lot of the aliens in the gun files are based on human personalities, right? Like whereas I think aliens are probably going to have very different personalities and very different biological needs. So at least for humans, like, I don't think it's natural for us to stay hidden or not to, live in the world, to be open about who we are. You have to live in the world, and we're part of the world. I think we're not from this earth, but like of this earth. We are in an ecosystem where we are in symbiosis with the earth, right? So if aliens could come here, and if they did, I just don't think they'd be able to stay hidden for long. They'd have to learn how to be part of this earth community, Now I could understand their need to stay hidden, because we're kind of a mess right now. But I would hope that if we do encounter some kind of aliens, that we can learn from each other and live harmoniously together. Like that's what I want. And I think that if you look at the series trajectory of the gun files, it's over the course of the 3 books, they start to get more and more exposed, and it becomes harder and harder to stay hidden, because I think that's what would actually happen.
Right. I guess there's a significant difference between the Men in Black and gun files, which you alluded to earlier. Obviously in Men in Black, the governmental organization is controlling the population of
exactly
off-worlders on Earth, whereas in the gun files, it seems more organic.
Yeah.
And therefore, you can actually see it as growing over time.
Totally. The thing about Men in Black too is, like, they never allow the big reveal because they want the series to continue. And I think, with the book series, I can say, like, that's the end, and I kind of know where I'm going. Now there are other ways to continue the series beyond, like, the revelation of aliens on Earth. So it's not like the series has to end, but with Men in Black, like, they locked it down, right? It's also heavily based in, like, UFOs and Roswell, and, like, if you look at the Men in Black lore, they were discovered in the 1950s around Roswell, and we found them, and then the government had to control them, and so we are the governing body. I think that works fine, and it's believable enough for an action comedy. But do you really think the government would be able to keep that a secret that long? I don't know. I'm skeptical. I don't think we're that smart or that good at hiding things.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion for several hours.
Right.
My own view is the government doesn't have to be in control of everything. They just have to be in control of enough to wash it away, so most people don't believe it. I have no idea. I'm not taking any side on whether I think there are aliens or off-worlders on the planet or not. But
who knows?
Given all the various government things that have happened over the last few years, there would clearly be an attempt to hide it, at least.
Totally.
So last question then is, I think you had an AI in one of your series, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to ask you if self-aware AI are possible. And we didn't speak on AI much in this episode, actually not at all. But so I'm coming at it a bit out of the blue. But then I'm suggesting that odds are they already exist if there's other species in the galaxy. And that opens up the possibility of us being in a simulation. You're undoubtedly aware of simulation theory. So what do you think the likelihood of this is? How might we be able to tell? And would it matter?
I don't know. I haven't given this one much thought. I mean, it's probably pretty likely. It seems plausible. I mean, it's as plausible as string theory to me. I don't know much about either one, but yeah, it certainly seems possible.
So do you think it would matter if we're in that? Because obviously some people would have the issue of, well, then nothing's real, for example.
Yeah.
But have you seen the movie, the Disney movie? I think it was Free Guy.
Oh, I did see Free Guy. Yeah.
There's one point where he's having a crisis of faith with his friend, and
Yeah.
he's like, "What does it mean, right? If this is all fake?" And the guy's like,
Right.
"Well, I'm sitting here chatting with my best friend about working him through problems in his life, and this moment is real, regardless
That's
of
right.
whether everything else is real."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, if we are in a simulation or we're not, I can't change that. So I don't think it matters to me. I also have always believed that, life is about the journey and the experience. It's not necessarily about the goal. And, if we are living in a video game, like I might as well have fun while I'm here. That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't like to dwell on things or worry about things that are outside of my control. Like, a lot of people get depressed because of the state of the world, or why they think life is meaningless, like why am I here? But I've just been the kind of person my whole life who's like, well, let's just get on with it, let's go do things, and if we are in a simulation, at least I can have fun while I'm here. So
yeah, I suppose if it was a simulation, the one thing I would do is maybe try to work out how to hack in a bit more or something.
Like the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be the
I mean, yeah, I'm always trying to do that. Like, what can I do that's more or better, or, how can I level up? I think that's like the meaning of life is growth and change and challenge. I've always liked that stuff. Like, I don't want to do stuff if it's easy. This is why, and I know we didn't really cover AI much, but a lot of people are worried about, AI novels kind of like shoving out real writers, and the books that were produced in a more traditional way. And for me, I might use AI to kind of speed up my process or as a tool to play with, but if the AI is just going to write my books for me, that's not fun. I don't enjoy that. So I doesn't seem like as much of a threat to me. I think we're going to start using it as a tool, but again, it's like, well, I mean, if that does you in, you're like, well, AI can write a book, guess I'm not going to do it anymore. Like, okay, see ya, go do a different profession, go play a different game if you don't think that this game is fun and worth playing. But this is a game that I like playing, and I think writers are going to use these tools and continue to make amazing work. And the challenge, as ever, is to continue to be found, to continue to like be seen, to reach readers, and to resonate with them, right? To write something unique and different. It's not about how fast you could produce a generic novel. It's about how does your unique voice reach and touch people's hearts. And, if we can do that, then we've succeeded, whether we use AI to do it or not.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So, and we're about at the end of our time. So it has been great chatting with you. We could, I'm sure, chat for hours more on many of these subjects. But before we go, perhaps you could just tell us sort of what you have coming out next, where to find you online, and if you'll be at any upcoming events.
Yeah, thanks. This was super fun. So the thing I'm working on next is relaunching the Gun Files trilogy, the original trilogy. I got the rights to the ebooks and print books back, and I'm going to relaunch them on Kickstarter probably over the summer. I also have the last novella in the space opera series. It's called Operation Heartstrike, and that'll be out this week sometime. I just released it to Kickstarter. It's getting produced in audio by Keith McCarthy, who narrated the rest of the series, and so that'll be out soon.
Oh,
and if you want to find more about me or my books, just go to mgherron.com, mgherron.com, or you can find me on Facebook.
Well, thanks so much, MG Herron. Thank you again for joining me today.
I appreciate it, Edwin. All right. Nice to talk to you.
And thank you for listening. Information and links related to this and all episodes are available at alternatefutures.co.uk. I'm also over at Substack under Alternate Futures, where I post articles on science fiction, socio-technological issues, and futurism. You can subscribe for free or sign up for a paid account if you'd like to support the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not share it with friends, writers, and other sci-fi fans you know? And if there are any indie sci-fi creators you'd like to see featured, send me a message at podcast@alternatefutures.co.uk. Once again, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode.
This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future.